Today we're going to be starting Chapter 2, and this is Lesson 2.1, Comparing, Ordering, and Rounding Decimals. This is going to be a chapter that we do not use our calculators on, so for all of Chapter 2 we won't be using our calculators. The first thing I want to talk to you about is place value. Now this is something that we have talked about since elementary school, okay? So you might think, I already know all of this, but I just want to make sure we are all on the same page. So let's imagine that we have this number here that says 215.9513. So I want to focus on the numbers right now that are to the left of the decimal point. First up we have the 5. This is in the ones place, okay? As I go left, this is in the tens place, and then this is in the hundreds place. But today I want to really focus on these numbers that are coming after the decimal point on the right-hand side. So the first number that's right there to the right of the decimal point is the tenths place. Coming up, the 5 is in the hundredths place, the 1 is in the thousandths place, and then that 3 is in the 10,000ths place. In order to be successful in Chapter 2, you must know your place value. So if this is not something that you have memorized already, please go back and memorize these different place values. For our first example problem today, number 1 is asking us to copy and complete the statement using less than, greater than, or equal to sign. So what we're going to do each time is we're just going to take these and I want us to line them up. So we're going to line them up with the decimal point. So here I've got 7.01 and directly underneath it I'm going to put 7.03. So now what I want you to do is I just want you to look at the first number. The first number here is a 7 and this one is a 7. So as I'm comparing, that's exactly the same thing. I cannot tell which one is bigger or smaller. Next up, I'm going to look at the tenths place. I've got a 0 and a 0. Once again, it's exactly the same number. So now I have to go to the next number, the one that's in the hundredths place, a 1 and a 3. As I look at that, I can clearly tell that a 3 is bigger than a 1. So we know that 7.01 is less than 7.03. Once again, remember that as you are doing this sign right here, the greater than sign, the part that opens up needs to go to the bigger number. Okay, when you were in elementary school, I think a lot of times they used to think of this like a crocodile or an alligator, and with this they had these teeth that were coming, and alligators or crocodiles love to eat, and they always love to eat the biggest thing, so always make sure it's going toward the bigger number. I would prefer you not to give teeth to your greater than and less than signs though, okay? So let's go to the next one, problem B. I've got 22.5. Once again, you're going to write it directly underneath the blank, and then you're going to line up your decimal point. So I'm just going to go ahead and put the decimal point first, and then I've got 22.12. So let's look at the whole number. On the left of the decimal point, this says 22, and this says 22. So those are exactly the same. Now I have to go to the next number over. As I look at this, I can see this one's a 5, and this one is a 1. Obviously the 5 is bigger, so you're going to say 22.5 is greater than 22.12. Now here's another thing that sometimes people like, and they have said that this helps them. If you go ahead and put in a placeholder, okay, so then you can see right there that the 50 is bigger than a 12, okay? So this is all helping us whenever we are comparing numbers. Let's go to the next one. It says 8.49 and 8.48. Once again, you're going to write it directly underneath the blank. So I've got 8.49, 8.48. As I look at this, once again, I can see the 8s are the same, the 4s are the same. So now I am comparing the hundredths place, 9 and 8, and which one's bigger? We know that a 9 is bigger than an 8, so 8.49 is greater than 8.48. Now once again, you can see right here, the part that opens up is opening up to the bigger number. When you think about the alligator, it wants to eat more food or sadly more humans. So it will go over toward the bigger number. Okay, so let's look at this last one over here. Once again, remember, rewrite it directly underneath the blank. 16.5 and 16.50. When I look to the left of the decimal point, my whole number, 16 and 16 are exactly the same. When I go to the tenths place, the 5 and the 5 are exactly the same. Now if you look at the last part on this first one right here, there is not even a number in the hundredths place. Anytime there's not a number in the hundredths place, you can always know you would put a 0. So when I look at this, 16.50, 16.50, this is obviously going to be equals because they are equal to each other. Next up for example 2, it's asking us to do something completely different. It says to order the numbers from least to greatest, but we are going to need to learn and remember what we just talked about with comparing decimals. So once again, what you're going to do, and I want you just to do this to line up the decimal points. So directly underneath this first problem, we're going to rewrite 2.11, and then I want you to rewrite the next one, 2.21. And go ahead and rewrite the next one, 2, and then you know that the decimal point comes right after the number, so 2 point. Next up you'll have 2.06, and then finally you've got 2.24. Now there's one that is missing some numbers there, so we're going to go ahead and stick in some placeholders, okay? After the 2, I'm just going to stick in 2 zeros, okay? Just remember that for this one, it did start off as the number 2, okay? So now what we're going to do is we are going to go through and we're going to see which one of these comes first, which one is the least, okay? Once again, as I look at all of this right here, they all have a whole number 2. So I've got to go to the next place over. Here you can see a 1, a 2, 0, 0, and 2. Out of all of those, the one that's the tiniest is the 0. So I've got 2 of them are at zeros. So we're going to go ahead and go over here. Now I have to go to the next one. This is also a 0, and then the hundreds place, this is a 6. So out of those 2, which one is tiniest? You can tell the 2.00 is. Now when I come down here to put it in order from least to greatest, I am not going to rewrite 2.00. I'm going to go ahead and go back to what it said originally up there at the top of my original problem, which was just a 2. So I'm going to go ahead and put a 2, and now I know I have used this one up, so I'm going to go ahead and cross it out. The next one up that I'm going to use is this other one I've starred here, 2.06. So I know that that's going to be next, 2.06. Let's go ahead and cross this out. Okay, so now I have 3 numbers. Once again, I'm putting them in order from least to greatest. So let's look. It's 2.1 for this first one, 2.2 for the next one, and 2.2 for this one. Obviously, out of all of those, the tiniest one is 2.11. So I'm going to go ahead, cross this out, and put in order as my next smallest one, 2.11. Okay, so now I have 2 options left, 2.21 and 2.24. When I look at those 2 numbers, I can tell that 2.21 is the next tiniest one. And then finally, 2.24 is the greatest number. As I look at all of these, I'm going to just go back through before I box in my answer and see 2. Then next up, I've got 2.06, 2.11, 2.21, and 2.24. So you have now officially put them in order from least to greatest, and that's how you do number 2. We're going to go ahead and do one more example exactly like this. All right, so here you can see I've got all these different numbers. Now remember, once again, just like I did on the one before, we're going to rewrite each of the numbers and we are going to line up the decimal points, okay? Because you want to be able to easily compare. When you're easily comparing, you can do that best whenever the decimal points are all lined up right underneath each other, okay? Now, sometimes people accidentally copy down the wrong numbers, so just go back through right now real quick and make sure that each of them says exactly what it is that you wanted it to do and that it says exactly what the original problem said, okay? So there is one here that I need to put a placeholder in. Which one is that? Okay, it's 4.4, so I'm going to go ahead and slip the 0 in there. So now we're going to go back through and we're going to try to find the tiniest ones, okay? Once again, we always start with the ones place. You can see I've got some 3s, I've got some 4s. Obviously, when I'm looking for the smallest one or the least of them all, it's going to be the 3s, okay? So I know right now I am going to be looking at this one and I'm going to be looking at this one. I've got 3.84 and 3.48. Obviously, out of the 2 of those, the smaller one is 3.48. So I'm going to go ahead and put that down there and put a line through it to know that I have used it up, okay? Now I'm going to go right back up, use my other one that starts with a 3, 3.84. Okay, so now I have used up all my numbers that start with a 3. I'm going to go to the next ones. And you can see the last 3 numbers that I'm trying to put in order from least to greatest start with a 4. So now let's go ahead and look at the 10th place. I've got 4.4, 4.8, and 4.3. Out of those, we know 4.3 is the smallest one. So next up, I'm going to put 4.38 and go ahead and cross it out. I'm left with two options now. So I know it's either going to be 4.4 or 4.83, okay? So out of those, I know that 4.4 is the next smallest one. Now, you do not want to put in there 4.40 because if you look back up, that is not what my original number said. You always have to put back what the original number said. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that 0 because it was just a placeholder. I'll cross this out, and then I know my very last number that I've got to put in, which is the greatest number, is 4.83 or 4 83/100 is how you read that number. You want to go ahead and box it in because you have now put them in order from least to greatest. Okay, so far we have compared decimals and then we just ordered some decimals. Well, the last thing we're going to do today is rounding decimals. So there's a rule here that'll help you out, and this is something you've probably learned since elementary school. But to round a decimal to a given place value, you'll always look at the digit in the place to the right, okay? So let's just say that I've got 5.63, okay? Let's say that I was trying to round to the nearest tenths place, okay? So that's this one right here. So what you'll do is you'll ask this number that you underlined, are you 5 or bigger, okay? So here, here we're gonna actually be rounding it to the ones place, okay? So when you look at that number and you ask it, are you 5 or bigger? If it says yes, then this number right here is gonna get one bigger. So instead of 5.63, that rounded to the nearest whole number would be a 6, okay? Let's say that I was asking you to round it now to the nearest tenth, okay? So you're gonna go ahead, you'll look over here, and you're gonna be asking this guy, are you 5 or bigger? Because he's asking his neighbor right there. That one says no. So if it says no, then the 5.6 will stay the same, and that would be your answer, okay? So this might be a little bit confusing, so let's do a few other examples together, okay? This has asked us to round the decimal as specified. This one is asking us to do it to the nearest tenth. So you've got to figure out which one is in the tenths place, all right? The tenths place is always going to be that number that's right to the right of the decimal, okay? So this guy right here, he is going to ask his neighbor next to him, are you 5 or bigger? That 2 will say no. So whenever you say no, remember it's going to stay the same. So I'm just going to bring this right here down. 7.1 stays exactly the same, and that is that number rounded to the nearest tenth, okay? Next up, we've got 8.147. I'm rounding it to the nearest hundredths. So you're going to underline the hundredths place, and this number is going to ask its neighbor to the right of him, are you 5 or bigger? That 7 says yes. So in our notes that we just wrote down, if it says yes, then this right here has to get 1 bigger than it is. So instead of it being 8.14, you now will have it round up to 8.15. All right, we're going to do the last one. This is asking us to round it to the nearest whole number, okay? The 10 is my whole number. So that 10 is going to ask his neighbor to the right, are you 5 or bigger? That 10 says yes. Remember, if it says yes, then your whole number is going to get 1 bigger. So 1 bigger than 10 is 11. All right? So this is how you round numbers, okay? We'll have some more practice today in our homework. So this is tonight's homework assignment. It's just 10 problems, but I want you to go ahead and write it down on a piece of paper. And that is all you need to know today for 2.1, comparing, ordering, and rounding decimals.